So here is a progress on our Buick, the 60. Got our new bearings and retainers on the axles. Backing plates cleaned and painted. I'm going to show you something here. So this is a torque tube car. Splines to the tranny. It's got a master spline top and bottom to keep the U-joints in line. Broke a yoke. There's the other part there. Pretty brutal. So it's got a carrier bearing, so that bolts to the tranny. There's a carrier bearing. This one is ruined because the bearing seized, so that's supposed to be in there. And there's your U-joint. There's a retainer on the back of the transmission. Now this is weird. These cars do not have trailing arms. So you got a panhard bar, which is that big bar there, that goes there, and then to the frame up there. Okay, you got the springs. Of course, you know, shocks that would bolt there. This little stud, there's two of those bars that come from that stud to there. So you got a U-joint in the back of the transmission there. This is a rubber sealed ball and socket. So that tube bolts to that. So that is literally those 4 9/16 bolts. 2 on each side. You can barely see them there. That is what holds that entire diff from going forward and back. So you got a carrier bearing in there, so that part of the axle is straight. You got a U-joint behind it, and then it's got a coupler back there that goes splines to that. Pretty wild. Very interesting design. So 2 years ago when this car came in, I had to build the Dynaflow transmission in it. One of the bolts was stripped in the mount, the other one up in there was missing. Both engine mounts were broke, so it's got brand new engine mounts on it. That was fun, let me tell you. So the thing to note about these, it's kind of frightening. The diff has the panhard to go side to side. Does very little for fore and aft. 4 9/16 bolts holds the diff and tube to the back of the tranny. So the transmission mount and the engine mounts is what's keeping that diff from shoving everything forward or, you know, in reverse, pulling it back. It's crazy. So imagine how wild this thing was when it came in with both engine mounts broke and only one transmission mount bolt in it. And it drove here. Had a transmission leak. Yeah, something major. So this is the last year. 60 Buick. This is the last year for Buick on the torque tube. And they're a nightmare to work on. To me, I think they're a nightmare. So we replaced all of that with a good shaft. A trick on these I'll show you in the back. So if you do bearings like that, there's a lot of diffs, GM, Ford, Dodge, I've seen a lot that have that kind of plate and retainer on the outside or a floating axle. The press we have, they're a nightmare to try to get them apart. Now to press them together, it's easy because the shaft goes between and all that. So the easiest way I found is to cut them. So if you notice on the factory retainers, see all the chisel marks. You can take a big chisel and hammer the hell out of it in several spots, and it will expand where it doesn't hold as tight. And you can just take 2 screwdrivers and pop that right off. Piece of cake. Works also on crank sleeves and things like that. On some diesels I've had to do that. You just get a chisel and punch it, and it'll expand enough to come off. On the races, you can see where it broke and how far I cut. So all I do is I cut at an angle not to get into the retainer, and just put a chisel in the end where you cut, hit it with a hammer, it'll split and break it. No problem, there you go. Those come out easy. The inner race, we could see this thing had bearings bad, like a big dog. So you can see how far I cut, and all I did is air chiseled them from there. And usually if you look close, you'll see a hairline crack. Yeah, you can kind of see it in that one. And that's not cut all the way through, but it split. Easiest way I found to get these off. Big chisel, prise off, cut mostly, use the same big chisel, and just hit them real good. They'll split, crack, break, and then, you know, air hammer the center off and done deal. Piece of cake. Still can't get over how those tubes work on these. I haven't done many torque tube cars, and I imagine they're all similar in some form or fashion. Putting that torque tube and diff back in is a nightmare. It's that ball and socket knuckle piece is super tight because it's got a seal, obviously. That's the updated retainer and ball and everything. When I built this unit, we updated all of that so we wouldn't have any issues and leaks and all that stuff. So I'm going to scrape and clean, start putting it back together. Got to make brake lines, and we're going to gravity bleed most of it because it pretty much will gravity bleed itself. See if we can't get it on the road today.